This is the weekend edition of Fear and Greed Business News, Australia's best business podcast. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael. I have to say, listeners don't realise this. We've taken about 15 minutes to get on the show this morning because we have been laughing non-stop and mostly at the expense of our wonderful judge, Adam Lang.
Which is pretty typical, isn't it?
Just thinking that sometimes you put a show together and just at the beginning, and that's not even right to say at Adam's, like all three of us have been laughing and we just sort of get in there and you just start giggling like school kids.
Well, there's a certain immaturity that comes through, isn't there? And
very weekend edition, I think.
Yeah. And look, our weekend show is quite light. It is quite fun compared to the weekday shows, which are fun still, of course, Sean. I wouldn't suggest they're anything but. But the weekend show is very different because here it's very competitive. It's a bit more kind of spirited, the debate, because we're trying to find the biggest story of the week, the sleeper story, and our favourite story. And of course, as you mentioned, we have a judge. We need a judge in order to decide a winner for all of these different categories. And he has a very elaborate, what would you call it, a marking matrix and a template that he uses. Adam Lang, our Fear and Greed colleague, our esteemed judge, good morning.
Good morning, Michael. Good morning, Sean. I know that in this competition that I do get a little bit of feedback from you both. Usually the winner is pretty okay with my decision and then the other one isn't.
Yeah, look, I actually think often the winner's not happy either. I mean, it's kind of like a free-for-all. And
it's a special gift to actually irritate everyone,
yeah.
The winners and the losers. Everyone finds something to argue with your judgments.
Superpower.
Yeah, it is.
The amazing thing really is that I think Michael and I have worked out that we just abuse each other, and you, Adam, you are just too nice. You don't abuse us.
Okay.
But that's the problem, that he then slips in a sneaky one every now and then, where it's just
Maybe
this
I'll try.
savage whack.
The uppercut.
Maybe I'll try today. We'll see how I go. If the moment's there, I'll take it.
Oh, of course you will. We are very opportunistic, all of us, it seems. If you sense that one of the three of us is down, the other two just pile in all of a sudden. It's like it's just this sensing weakness. Can we get you very quickly, Adam, to give us a quick summary of the judging criteria?
Absolutely.
As random as they are and as much as they may change today during the course of the episode, what are they at now at the start?
Well, here's the introduction to my judging matrix. So number 1, topicality. Number 2 is timeliness. Number 3, and this is very important for a business show, is of course economic impact. Then it's my subjective bias. Everyone's got it. I probably have more than most. And last, we like to deploy melodrama. So that's what we're marking on: topicality, timeliness, economic impact, subjective bias, and melodrama.
And is it an even weighting?
Yeah, no, I was going to ask the same thing, because when it comes to melodrama, I ain't in the game. When it comes to economic impact, Michael, you ain't in the game.
Oh, please.
You've all got your strengths.
That's right.
Oh, okay. You know what? Let's jump into it. We'll get into the biggest story of the week. And Sean, I always like you to go first because you will typically take the biggest. It's a little bit kind of unethical the way you play this game. Like you just go in there and you just
sledging's begun already,
and you don't leave anything for me. But you know what? I'm okay with that because I am an underdog. I am the underdog. I am the champion of the underdog.
Well, true listeners know that I actually wasn't so well yesterday. I had the day off, so didn't get a chance to look at this until after you'd done yours.
Move on. What's your biggest story, Sean?
It's the economy, not just the local economy, but the global economy as well. Plenty of very important information released this week in the United States, United Kingdom, and Australia. Just the groan. Plenty of information this week. US, UK, Australia, which potentially changes the course of interest rates. Starting in Australia, the employment market surprised most economists, created about 55,000 jobs last month, more than double forecasts, but the jobless rate edged higher to 3.7%. Now, the majority of new jobs were part-time, though full-time positions increased by about 17,000. The reason for that increase in the unemployment rate was a record participation rate of 67%. That's a great thing. People, not when they can find a job, but people are looking for jobs and they can find them. We also had wages data. Wages are increasing at their fastest pace on record. That's for the 3 months to the end of September. A lot of that's about aged care employees and low-paid workers receiving big one-off pay rises. Annual wage growth hit 4% in the September quarter, according to the Bureau of Statistics. That's after pay packets grew at a record quarterly pace of 1.3%. Now, that figure was in line with the Reserve Bank forecasts. The point in all this is that in Australia, there's a fair consensus that the wages data will be the peak. That's good for inflation. And even though there were plenty of jobs over the 3 months and over the course of this year, jobs growth is actually running below average. Most people reckon the labour market has peaked as well. Peak in wages, peak in labour market. The economic cycle is turning. Look overseas. In the US, the inflation rate last month fell to 3.2%. We found that out this week. That's for the 12 months to the end of last month. In the UK, the rate tumbled from 6.2% to 4.6%. Lowest rate in 2 years. Looks like the global economy has turned already. Massive story, a turn in the economic cycle. Now, how often do you get that, Adam? Every 2, 3, 5 years or something like that? Huge economic implications. Michael, your biggest story. Beat that.
Okay, look, let's just all calm down here a little bit because you're getting a little bit too excited here, Sean. I've come back from holidays, right? I've been away for a few weeks, and I've actually come back with a bit of a new philosophy, a new strategy. Now, it's not even a strategy. Strategy implies like too much kind of
thought,
intentional thought.
Yeah, that I'm doing this to win. It is a philosophy. It is just this idea that I'm not going to bend the rules anymore. I'm not going to jam a whole lot of stories into one. I'm just going to pick one single story and stick with that. And if Sean wants to keep on cramming unemployment, wages, US inflation, UK inflation, interest rate, and the whole economic turning point into one story and trying to dress it up as one, I'm not even going to raise that as an issue. I will just say that is up to the judge to do his job and to sort this out and not let Sean get carried away. So, in line with my new very zen philosophy of just letting things go and picking one story, my single biggest story of the week, please, is the face-to-face meeting between the two most powerful people on the planet.
The Pope?
Chinese President Xi Jinping and his US counterpart Joe Biden, they met in San Francisco on the sidelines of the APEC summit. Now, this is not just significant, this is hugely significant. So it is a whole nother order of significance because the relationship between these countries has been deteriorating significantly over the last few years.
Michael, don't you hate it when Adam is ferociously writing?
Well, I love it because often the worst part is when you make a whole stack of points and he just looks at you the whole time. You're like, what, none of those were worth writing down?
No, he was ferociously writing then, and I don't know whether it's having a go at you or a plus or a minus. Anyway, go on.
I have faith. I have faith that he's listening.
Excellent. Good.
And he's taking detailed notes. Trade spats, Adam, write that one down.
Story number 2.
There's concerns over China's aggression towards Taiwan. Write that one down. That's a big one.
Story number 3.
No, this is not. This is context for where we have come from. This has not happened this week, so I'm not requesting that they be included in the judging, Sean. There's been tech dramas with iPhones and Huawei smartphones, and even the spy balloon saga. Remember that one? That was don't count that as a separate story, Sean. You know what? I'm going to switch off your microphone in a minute. I've had enough. I've had it up to here with you.
So much for the zen.
No, I am zen. I'm more zen than I usually am. It feels like, you know what you're trying to do? It feels like you're trying to bait me here into becoming melodramatic, and I refuse to be melodramatic here. I'm going to win on substance.
Look at those arms waving.
For these two leaders to be in the same room on US soil, mind you, is big. And importantly, they're actually trying to work out some of these big, big issues. Climate change and artificial intelligence, to name a couple. So they are really tackling some very, very meaty kind of topics. I do think it's as well of some comfort that they address the elephant in the room, that they have a responsibility to ensure that their competition doesn't veer into conflict, as they put it, and that turning their backs on one another is not an option. Of course, the meeting was not without its hiccups, with Biden confirming to media afterwards. You've really thrown me here, Sean. I'm just waiting for you to just insert another little snide count of topics. This is a single story. It is one story.
Single long story.
Only because you keep interrupting. If you had let me do this unimpeded, I would have been through it in about 30 seconds. Goodness me. After the meeting, Joe Biden confirmed to media that he still believed President Xi to be a dictator. That's obviously what people kind of paid attention to. It's what all the headlines are. But it doesn't take away from the fact that this meeting took place, that they discussed topics that are of global importance, global significance. The political and economic importance of this cannot be overstated, right? It is impossible to overstate it. Because even as it relates to Australia, right, this is the world's largest economy and our most powerful ally, speaking to the world's second largest economy and our biggest trading partner. So there is your Australian link there, Adam. And considering the precarious state of global politics and the obvious flow-on effects to financial markets, this is the biggest story of the week by far. One story, the biggest. Adam.
It is a massive story, Michael. And even if it just stops friction over Taipei and Taiwan, that is very, very significant.
Isn't it good to have a voice of reason in these discussions, Michael?
Oh, it's only because you know there's a but coming. Yeah.
All right.
Here it comes.
But Sean, your line, the economic cycle is turning. That is really the biggest story of the week for me. I think we have peaked, and I don't know that we're used to what's to come. You know, the disruption of where we are and what's to come economically.
Adam, look at Michael's face. It's just disdain.
Open hostility, isn't it?
No, it's just like there were 6 stories crammed into one. Of course that's going to win, just on sheer weight of numbers.
Well, really, no, I think the title of the story, The Economic Cycle is Turning, I think that is true. We have had this obviously incredibly disruptive but somewhat remarkable period of economic health when we thought the world was going to stop, you know, with COVID, and it hasn't. Then we've had geopolitical issues, Ukraine, Russia. As we know now, Israel and Gaza. You know, these are incredibly important conflicts at the same time. So, no, I think Sean has to take it for this one. Definitely the biggest story of the week.
I'm going to try a new strategy next week.
Logic.
Now that I've realised that this new philosophy doesn't work. Clearly, according to what you've just said there, Adam, that if you just give it a nice title, the story, you can group anything. So I'm just going to go next week. My story title is Midweek Dramas, and I'm going to include everything that happens from, say, Tuesday to Thursday of that week, group it in under one. It's all called Midweek Dramas, therefore it's one story, therefore I should win. I don't mean to be melodramatic here.
This. No, of course not. And I'll just take it as great feedback for me, Michael. Yeah, I'm observing a real change in you, Zen.
Oh, well, it didn't last long, and I blame Sean. Like with those little kind of...
It's somebody else's fault.
To you. He got to you with those little kind of snide remarks during my story. I reckon I'm not questioning whether you're able to
Let's do a word count. I might do a word count.
I may even give Sean maximum points on this one.
Let's move on. This is outrageous. Okay, no, you know what? That's honourable. It's 1-0. I accept the judge's decision graciously. Most remarkable story. Shall I go first on this one?
Yes, I think so.
I realise I don't want to do too much damage too early on, so I'm going to have to just accept the judge and hope for a fresh start on this one. Most remarkable. I think it is remarkable, right? With so many high-profile cyber attacks and cyber incidents over the last little while, that half of Australian companies are not prepared for the threat. So this was the warning that came this week from ASIC, with Chairman Joe Longo warning that businesses must close, quote, alarming gaps in their cybersecurity defences. So this report, which you took us through this week, Sean, rates Australian companies on their cyber maturity on a scale of 1 to 4, 4 being ideal. It gives the weighted average across corporate Australia of just 1.66. So as you described it, Sean, most companies are reacting to problems as they arise rather than properly mitigating them, and that small companies markedly worse than larger ones. But the stats get even worse. 44% of organisations are failing to manage the cyber risks posed by dealing with external third parties. 58% have limited or no ability, none, to secure confidential information. A third of companies have no cyber incident response plan. This is remarkable when you think about what we have seen. The attack on port operator DP World, very recent, that one. High-profile attacks on companies like Optus and Medibank and a whole lot of other ones, and plenty that we don't actually hear about as well. The economic impact of not being cyber ready is huge, not to mention the reputational damage to businesses as well. With so much attention on it, and including so much attention at the board level now as well, I find it completely remarkable, as we learnt this week, that corporate Australia, according to the corporate regulator, is so underprepared. Now, the government is expected to announce a long-awaited national cybersecurity strategy next week. This is clearly one of the biggest challenges that Australian businesses are facing right now. And based on what ASIC has found, we are still so far behind. And I find that remarkable, considering the attention that has been on this issue and the fact that businesses are well aware of the costs of getting it wrong and being attacked. Sean, I ignored you that entire, what no one else would be aware of, that you were there yawning and stretching your arms and trying to throw me off. But as a true professional, I ignored you. Please, what have you got?
Well, that was fun, that story, wasn't it? Absolutely. Cracker. My most remarkable story.
The heck? It's just savage. Adam, step in. Penalise this guy.
Are you awake, Adam? You are. Yep. Okay, you're right.
Thank you. Please go
Now,
on.
my most remarkable story is slightly dangerous because I think it's the same one as I had last week. Well, it's just a different take on the same one I had last week. And last week, I was actually battling against Adam on this one, and I lost it because Sherelle Murphy was the biased judge, EY chief economist, fantastic economist, dreadful fear and greed judge. Anyway,
I love Judge
guess who won
Murphy.
last week? Yeah. Judge Murphy. Anyway, I think it's remarkable how well the banks are going. With all the big banks now having reported their last fiscal year results, earnings across the four banks hit $32 billion. That's 8% higher than a year earlier. That was driven by loan growth and profit margin expansion, particularly in the first half of the year. Now, the rising interest rate environment has definitely been a plus for the banks. So too, the easing but not cessation of competition in the housing market. Most of the benefits happened in the first half of the year, though. The good news is that credit quality across the sector is generally sound. There's been no mortgage cliff people have had to fall off or anything like that, as people have shifted from fixed rate loans to variable rate loans. What's interesting is that the banks are looking well beyond the mortgage market to demonstrate their wares and growth prospects. They're talking small business lending, big business lending, deposits, all that sort of stuff. Anyway, it's pretty remarkable how well the banks are doing money-wise. What's even more remarkable is how poorly they've done share price-wise. So banks are supposed to do really well in a rising interest rate environment. We have had the fastest interest rate rises ever since May last year. That is prime time for the banks. You know what their share prices have done? ANZ's flat. Commonwealth Bank is actually down a couple of percent. National Australia Bank and Westpac are down closer to 10%. In the best possible operating environment, the banks have made more money. Their share prices have gone backwards. We all own bank shares through our super funds, whether you like it or not. We do. I think that's really remarkable, just how poorly the bank share prices have done, given this incredibly favourable climate. That's it. Short, succinct, to the point, truly remarkable.
You notice that I didn't interrupt you.
Not once.
It's called courtesy.
That might be a new criteria. Courtesy.
Yeah, courtesy.
Ooh.
Goodness me.
Well,
Thank you, Adam.
be a bit dull though, won't it?
Imagine the demerit points on that.
Please, judge us.
You know, Sean, I actually think you brought some good melodrama to that. You're not usually disposed to melodrama.
Yeah, no, I'm more sensible.
And Michael, I had a couple of questions. We had a great interview with McGrath-Nicol Partners this week on cybersecurity. And a couple of those stats I thought you left out, which the high rates of...
Always good when Adam adds to your story.
Which I think are absolutely remarkable. You know, yes, it's actually fallen, the percentage of people paying ransoms, but it's still by far the majority of companies that go through cyber attacks are paying the ransoms.
And the $1 million on average.
Yeah, like this is incredible. So you can understand why this criminal machine goes on, right? Because it's working. And geez, I hope we can find better ways to combat it. So I think it is an absolutely remarkable story. Banks, you know, Sean, as we learn from you every week.
EY's Doug Nixon, we had him on talking about the banks. Just keep that in mind.
Doug Nixon.
Yeah, and great insights. He's been a semi-regular with Fear and Greed. He's terrific to listen to. And we know how important the banking sector is to the health of the overall economy. So I think, Sean, it is remarkable what we are seeing in banks and the changing business model, competition, so important. And just on this one, I have to just give it to you, Sean, because of the scale of the banks and their importance to the economy. But I am really troubled, and it is remarkable, the impact of cyber risks is not yet being felt. And it's like this old kind of Australian feeling, oh, it'll be all right, mate. You know, it's like, no, it won't. So please take Michael's lesson, heed it, and look after your cybersecurity.
Which is a less important lesson than the banks, apparently.
Clearly.
So
the scale of the banks is enormous.
But the banks are the banks. Cybersecurity affects every single business in the country. I'm not trying to argue now with your
protest
decision.
noted, Michael.
So every single business doesn't deal with a bank?
Sean, you know what? I'm just going to go Zen again. Just let it be.
When in doubt, go Zen.
I think it's half time, Michael.
Yeah. 2-0. Heading into halftime, I'm about to mount a spectacular comeback.
Yes. Come on, underdog, or as you self-described, champion of the underdogs.
It's going to be pretty glorious. We'll be back in a second. All right, Sean, we are looking for a sleeper story. So a sleeper story is one that's perhaps not getting the attention that it deserves or is going to become a bigger story further down the track. It's always my favourite category, this one. It's one that I may have had a little trouble with in the past. Not today. I've got a cracker of a story today. But you go first, please, Sean.
Well, I suspect we're going to have a very different listening experience in a few years' time. And that's because of all the deals or potential deals going on in the radio land. Now, obviously, in 10 years' time, everyone will be listening to Fear and Greed. That's a given. But apart from that, how are we going to consume audio? Over the past week or so, Seven West Media, backed by Kerry Stokes, the billionaire, became the largest shareholder in ASX-listed radio company ARN. So Seven is in ARN. They own 19.9% of the company. Now, ARN, which is the home of Kiss FM, Pure Gold brands, last month they made a bid for their main rival, Southern Cross Austereo. They went into partnership with a crowd called Anchorage Capital Partners. The idea is that when that pulls together, ARN and Southern Cross Austereo, it then will be split into two, one owned by ARN, one by Anchorage Capital Partners. And last week, Australian Community Media Executive Chair Anthony Catalano, a character we all know and love, well, at least Adam and I know and love him, offered to sell his newspapers or at least merge them into Southern Cross in return for a stake in that company. So we have Seven West in ARN. ARN trying to buy Southern Cross. Australian Community Media trying to get into Southern Cross. Confused? Yes, definitely. Me too. But this is a story right in Adam's wheelhouse, so to speak. I'm not sure what a wheelhouse is, but it's right in Adam's wheelhouse and a sleeper story because that whole sector is going to change in the next 12 months, especially if Catalano gets involved.
Oh, yeah. It's a fascinating space. It's been very public, though, hasn't it? It's been very unsleepery, I suppose. It's just been
really?
Kind of.
Oh, I don't know. What's your sleeper story? If that's your criteria, I'm sure your sleeper story is something that none of us know about. Go on.
Okay. My sleeper story this week is all about infrastructure.
Your story is going to put us to sleep, but that's not actually the category of sleeper story. Go on.
Australia, without being melodramatic here, thumping the desk. That's the first time I've done that, and I'm not going to do it again because everything's shook. Australia is facing an infrastructure crisis.
Oh, my God. Wake up, Australia.
Absolutely. It is a sleeper story, though, because without wanting to be unkind, infrastructure isn't exactly the sexiest topic in the world. Actually, to be fair, it is for some people. Have you seen those stories about people that marry bridges and things? That
melodrama, top points.
Oh, there was a story. There was a woman probably about 10 years ago who I think she might have even been Australian, and she married a bridge, like a French bridge, a French stone bridge, and had a full wedding and everything. But she did assure everyone that her attraction to the bridge was not sexual.
Michael, was it a bridge designed by Isambard Kingdom Brunel? one of the great engineers.
Yes, it was, Adam. It was. So I think that's worth a point. But I mean, wouldn't that be funny to have it? I mean, some people are sexually attracted to infrastructure. Maybe you see a nice toll road out there. It's like, check out that phone tower. That's a nice satellite dish on that one, eh?
I have no idea where to go here.
It is something that
I'm baffled.
I'm conceding. I'm conceding on melodrama. I'm actually conceding. Tell us the rest of your story though, but I'm conceding.
It's called objectophilia, where people have a sexual attraction to inanimate objects. And I believe that woman...
Objectophilia?
Yes, which is a sexual attraction to objects, to inanimate objects. And I believe that the bridge lady kind of said that she doesn't suffer from that. Hers is a more emotional, artistic, creative love.
Genuine affection.
Yeah, indeed. Whereas others, it's just pure animal magnetism.
Spiritual bond.
Yeah.
Animal magnetism. I tell you what, does the infrastructure play, the satellite dish, the tower, do they get a say in it?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't actually know. That's a really interesting point.
Enthusiastic consent.
That's a very interesting question.
We're getting onto dangerous territory. Let's just move on.
Yeah. Okay, so the reason I bring this up, I've pretty much forgotten where I was going now. It's not getting the mainstream attention that is. You're not going to see this kind of story leading, say, the 6 o'clock news on 7 or 9, and you're not going to see it on the front page of the Herald Sun and the Daily Telly necessarily.
Oh, if someone's got objectophilia and is marrying Eiffel Tower, you might.
Oh, well, those ones, yes. I'm talking about the infrastructure crisis in Australia, which means essentially, if I was to summarise it, get this on the front page of the Daily Telly, there is a complete lack of sexy bridges in Australia. Is that maybe going to help?
Maybe we're getting there now. You are a tabloid man.
The federal government has axed 50 road and rail projects across the country to save $7 billion. Infrastructure Minister Catherine King said that delivery times on some existing projects as well will face major delays. Now, this has all come about because of a review into the 10-year, $80 billion infrastructure investment program, which showed there's $32.8 billion in cost blowouts, including $14 billion on projects that haven't even started yet. So this all came about after the boss of Infrastructure Australia earlier in the week said that cuts would be necessary. He was basically preempting the release of the report, would be necessary because we just can't possibly deliver the level of works planned over the decade. He said that while we need, and this is where it gets really interesting, he said that while we need...
As opposed to everything we've been listening to for the last 10 minutes, this is interesting.
While we need a lot of infrastructure to meet the demands of a growing country, it needs to be better planned, and we just don't have the money or the workers to deliver it. I don't know how many times I need to say this. I don't want to be dramatic, but if that is not an infrastructure crisis, growing demand but insufficient money and insufficient workers, then I do not know what is. They should be teaching this in schools, right? This is how important this is, and it's not being covered in the way it should. Therefore, it's a sleeper story. One that we're going to be hearing about a lot more when demand hits like its peak, and the infrastructure that we need, those sexy bridges, those stunning airport runways, just aren't.
Yes, just aren't what? Whatever.
Just aren't there. Adam.
Okay. So, Michael, minor suggestion to your story. If you were going for the judge and my own subjective bias, you may have also pointed out that Infrastructure Australia was the one involved in making the reports that were referred to about which projects to cancel. Now, I think this is a crisis in terms of the federation of states, as in our federal government and states are just not working together to create the infrastructure we need. I think this is a massive sleeper story, and bizarrely, you win. But Sean, you have really played to my professional heartstrings. This remarkable period in audio land of companies looking to merge and buy each other and strategically play. It is fascinating, and it's happening in real time. So definitely a cracking story, and how it will play out, I don't know. So it's a really good sleeper story. I think Michael just gets you on scale on this one.
I reckon that's what I call a good loss. The judge liked it, but he's not really going to mark you down. It wasn't as good as yours, Michael. Fair enough, but it's not too bad.
You didn't have people marrying inanimate objects in yours.
No. 2-1 at the moment. That's not bad. So we're moving into the favourite story. Now, I don't want to preempt anything here,
however,
right? But there was a story during the week which Michael got very, very excited about, right? And what's it got to do with? Well, not quite space, but something like that. I guarantee you that's where he's going. So kick us off, Michael.
Well, I did bags this one early in the week, Sean, and I did it live on the show because it is just so good and it is so interesting, and the potential flow-on effects, the impacts here on Australian commuters are quite significant. This is about what? I'm trying to make sure it fits Adam's criteria. And I figure
Australian commuters. Yes, go on.
It's about the electric air taxis that are coming to New York by 2025. Now, so I've been doing a lot of
research. For Australian commuters.
Well, hey, wait for it. I did a lot of research and listened to a very, very long interview with the CEO of this company, and he did say that they are heading overseas. They are like...
Which could be Australia.
They are like oversized drones or mini helicopters, and they look really cool. They'll be taking passengers from JFK Airport to downtown Manhattan in just 7 minutes. And how about this? They are really quiet, and they are emissions free. They're electric, and they're not a figment of someone's imagination. They're actually happening. The manufacturer Joby Aviation carried out an exhibition flight this week in New York, so it is happening. It is real. The company is in the third of 5 stages of certification with the Federal Aviation Administration, and then they're off, hopefully in 2025. The best part, apparently, is that the company has previously said the cost will be equivalent to a ride share in a car. So can you imagine that? You have a choice between kind of sitting in an Uber or sitting in a taxi, or just jumping into a little electric kind of drone and buzzing into the city, and it's going to cost the same thing. Who is going to be sitting in an Uber for that time? Not me. The thing is, I watched a whole stack of videos as well put out by Joby Aviation. Why are you laughing at him?
I'm impressed at your research, Michael.
The thing is, I am dedicated to this program, and I thought if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this properly. And when they talk about how quiet it is, I want to actually hear for myself how quiet it is. And so I watched all these videos on the Joby Aviation channel on YouTube, and like there are some of them that are actually titled kind of quietest mini helicopter or whatever they call it, kind of quietest drone. And then you click on it, and the music that they have put over the track is so loud that you can't actually hear anything. And there's all these comments underneath going, would be great if we could actually hear the drone. And it's just like, okay, all right. And then I click on the next one, and they've done the exact same thing. They have this kind of intense kind of pumping soundtrack to hype up the thing, and you do no idea what it actually sounds like. Finally, I found a video on the Sun newspaper website that showed just how quiet it is. And seriously, it is quiet. It's quieter than, like when you're at a park or at kind of sporting fields or something, and someone is flying a drone down there, and they are that high pitched kind of screaming. Yeah, it's this whine, and it is quieter than that. I was seriously impressed, which I'm guessing really matters to Joby Aviation. Now, these things seat a pilot. They seat 4 passengers. They can go 200 miles per hour. Global ambitions, as I mentioned, which means I can also almost offer a personal guarantee that it's only a matter of time before they are in Australia too, which will obviously have a major economic impact and tick all of Adam's boxes. Whew.
The last sentence got me.
What's your favourite story, Sean?
You've ticked all of Adam's boxes. Well, I'm pleased you asked. It's the one that we had earlier in the week about companies that allow remote work having experienced revenue growth that's 4 times faster than those that are more stringent about office attendance. The analysis of 554 public companies that employ 27 million people found that fully flexible firm. I wonder if that's got something to do with the objectophilia and the bridges and the anyway.
I thought the same thing, Sean. You're not alone here, which means there is 2 out of the 3 of us that just default to smut. And Adam probably does too. He's just too refined to admit it.
Yeah. So fully flexible firms, which are either completely remote or allow employees to choose when they come into an office, their sales increased between 2020 and 2022 by 21%. Those who are hybrid or fully on-site increased sales of 5%. Now, this isn't a Mickey Mouse study. It's done by Flex Work Advisor Scoop Technologies. That probably doesn't add that much to it. But also Boston Consulting Group. They're serious players. It included companies across 20 sectors. Among the companies that did require at least some office attendance, the more flexible the company, the better the results. I love the reason for it. It's kind of self-evident. The better growth rates for more remote-friendly companies is possibly due to their ability to hire faster and from a wider geographic area. It helps employees' retention as well. It's common sense, but finally we have this data that shows flexible working from home ends up with better results than people in the office. My favourite story. Adam.
Oh, look, two great stories. One, Michael Jetson's being able to fly in the sky, and having been through the experience of JFK and transit to New York, I'd like to give it a go. I think it sounds fantastic. And Sean,
cool.
You have to win this one because of the economic impact. And for all the reasons stated, there's so many logical reasons why flexible and remote working is helping companies trade better. But here's the data to support it. And so I think that is just a brilliant story. And how good for people who perhaps can't get into an office, have to, caring duties, but they can pick up work and make it work for them and the company. I love that. I think it's a wonderful story.
Excellent. Excellent judging. While you were away for 3 weeks, it just seemed that I lost every week, I think. And I think the judges were against me, but I just like to see normal services have resumed, and I appreciate that. Maybe I'm not the common factor in this.
It's not you, Sean.
What would that be?
Sean, I'm already down. You don't need to kick me anymore.
Well, it was very close. I mean,
the underdog is just now lying on the ground.
3-1 on the story count. And would you like to know the scores, gentlemen?
Yes, please, because if it's within 4 points, then I consider it a tie.
A drubbing? Oh, okay, sorry. Well, it is indeed a tie. 91 points each.
Oh, is it really? Yeah. Oh, my God, it's actually...
It's a tie on the score count, but story count, Sean wins.
Oh,
I must have really mucked up one of them.
The story count doesn't matter now because in the end, it was 91 all. What an honourable way for us to begin again, Sean. This is great. A draw.
Commiserations, Michael.
Sean's on the top layer of the podium. Michael on second. Has to be.
Yeah, and I'm jumping up to try and get myself up aligned with him because technically it was a draw. Anyway, thank you very much, Sean.
Thank you very much, Michael.
And thank you, Adam.
Thank you, Michael.
Make sure you're following the podcast and please join us online on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter and Facebook. I'm Michael Thompson and that was Fear and Greed Business News. Have a great weekend.